Hello everyone, happy National Science Week. Welcome to the Super STEM Careers Q&A. We are going to be talking with 3 STEM professionals today who are going to share their exciting careers in science, technology, engineering and maths. And you'll be able to ask them your questions about their careers. My name is Lauren Sullivan, and I actually began my STEM career as a molecular and cell biologist. And then I discovered that I enjoyed talking about science with people more than I enjoyed being in a lab. So I decided to study science communication. I travelled around Australia performing science shows at schools, and now I work in the Office of the Women in STEM Ambassador on projects to make sure we have equal participation of women and men in science, technology, engineering and maths. And I'm going to be hosting our STEM Careers Q&A this evening. I would like to begin this event by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm presenting today, the Bedegal people. I pay my respect to their elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are joining this event today. Welcome everybody. I just wanted to let you know that this event is being recorded, so if you miss anything, you will be able to watch it again, and you will also be able to share it with your friends. If you would like to tweet or post about this live stream on social media, please use the hashtag Science Week and tag us at Women in STEM AU. So our event today is an interactive Q&A session where you will be able to ask our speakers questions about their careers in STEM. And I will also be asking you some questions too. And for this, we will be using a platform called Slido. So please grab out your phone, tablet, or open another tab in your computer and type in slido.com, that's slido.com, and enter the code A970. And you can start submitting your questions and keep them rolling in throughout the event. You can submit your questions anonymously, or you can choose to put your first name in so we know who's asked the question. Now it's time to test it out. So you'll see that a poll has appeared in Slido. I'm joining you from Sydney in New South Wales, and I'd like to know where you are all joining us from. So if you can fill out the poll telling us which state you're from. And I can see there's already quite a few people from Victoria. Can we see the poll results on the screen? I can see there's a lot of people here from Victoria, some from New South Wales, a couple from Queensland, one from Tasmania, a couple more from New South Wales, heaps from Victoria. It's great that you're all joining live. Awesome, thanks everyone. I'm going to start our Q&A off by asking our speakers some questions about their work in STEM and how they got there. And then we'll have about 30 minutes for your questions. So keep them rolling in through Slido as we go through. It is now my pleasure to introduce our speakers today. We've got Marita Cheng, Dr. Kalinda Griffiths, and Professor Lisa Harvey-Smith. Marita is a roboticist, tech entrepreneur, and CEO of Aubot, a company that creates telepresence robots that are used in care, education, corporate, and many other different settings. She is also the founder of RoboGals, an international organisation that delivers workshops to show girls the exciting world of engineering. Marita was inducted as the youngest member of the Order of Australia in 2019, and she was named one of Forbes 30 under 30 and the world's top 50 women in tech. Thanks, Marita. It's great to have you join us. Now, our next speaker is Dr. Kalinda Griffiths, who is a Yaru woman and epidemiologist at UNSW's Centre for Big Data Research. Kalinda's research looks at how Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health data is managed and used to benefit communities, and is working to enable health research in regional and remote Australia. Kalinda is also one of the superstars of STEM, a group of women in STEM who are visible public role models and communicate their science in the media and to decision makers. Our third speaker is Professor Lisa Harvey-Smith, who is an astrophysicist and Australia's first Women in STEM ambassador. As an astrophysicist, she researched the birth and death of stars and supermassive black holes and worked on the Square Kilometre Array, which is a global science project to build the world's largest radio telescope. Lisa now works across education, government, research, and industry to promote gender equity in STEM fields as Australia's first Women in STEM ambassador. Lisa has also been a TV presenter on the ABC show Stargazing Live, as well as her own astrophysics stage tour. She is also an author of 2 books about astrophysics, one for adults and one for primary school kids. Welcome to all of our speakers. So
Thank you very much.
To help us, it's great to have you here this afternoon. So to help us get to know our speakers a little bit better, I'm going to start with 3 rapid fire questions, and I'll start with you, Marita. Can you tell us, what does a roboticist do? What subjects did you enjoy at school? And what do you like to do when you're not working?
Roboticist creates, designs, and manufactures robots. So you have to think of a problem to solve and then make a robot that solves that problem. My favorite subject at school was maths. I think it's because I was good at it, so that's why I liked it. And my hobbies right now are cooking and going grocery shopping.
Cool, thank you. Lisa, how about you? What does an astrophysicist do? What did you enjoy at school, and what do you like to do when you're not working?
Well, an astrophysicist, I guess we look at the stars using powerful telescopes. We try and figure out exactly what's happening and answer a question. So if we look at a star, we might say, how hot is it? Or how big is it? What stage of its life is it in? So we're answering those questions about the history and evolution of the universe. My favourite subjects at school, I guess you would say PE, music, and I love science too. I love chemistry, and I actually do astrochemistry in my research, which is combining astronomy and chemistry, so figuring out what chemicals are out there in space and how they're creating the temperature and the burning in stars. So it's a pretty cool kind of mixture. And I've forgotten the third question. Was it about
what do you like to do? What do you like to do in your spare time?
What do I like to do? I love walking and running in the mountains and just being in nature. That's my favourite thing.
That's awesome. And Kalinda, how about you? What does an epidemiologist do?
So an epidemiologist describes and tries to understand diseases and health in society. And we often use data or big data to do this. So the second question on what did I enjoy in school was it was music, and I like drama as well, and PE were my 3 primaries. And then what do I do in my spare time? I do a fair bit of running. I've also recently started up a martial art, which I enjoy immensely, and I also play music.
That's great. What instrument do you play?
I play guitar and I sing.
Oh, that's awesome. So Lisa, I'd like to ask you, what do we mean when we talk about STEM careers? What is a STEM career?
Yeah, there's no answer to that. It's such a diverse range of careers. It's anything that uses logic, maths, evidence, science, engineering. So really about solving new problems in the world, in society, in nature, and using the skills of measurement and observation to actually create new solutions or new technologies. So that could be anything from health. Nursing is part of STEM. Measuring pharmacy is part of STEM. Using tools to help human health. Researching diseases, as Kalinda was saying, is STEM. Or it could be building things or creating technologies, whether it's computing technologies or physical things, robots, machines, to help build a better world. And that's what we mean by STEM. So many different things, and very creative things too.
Thank you. Lisa, can you tell us about your career journey? So I guess how you went from school and then the decisions that you made and when you decided that you wanted to become an astrophysicist.
Yeah, it was an easy choice for me, I think. When I was young, I said I liked sports and I wanted to be a professional sports person. And I think you realise at some point you're not quite good enough to be in the Olympics, then you're not going to make a career out of sport. So I decided to think about other things that I was interested in. I always loved nature and I loved the outdoors. And from that, I started looking at the stars. And I fell in love, actually, with just looking at the stars. And I saw a comet and I saw planets. And I thought, wow, this is incredible. It was kind of a love affair after that. I read a lot about astronomy and space, and I was really inspired by it. I went to things like space school, which is like a bit like the National Youth Science Forum in Australia. So it's a kind of a summer camp where you go and you learn about space and astronomy. There were real life astronauts there, and I really got hooked on that. So I decided to become an astronomer. And I didn't really know how to do that. My family hadn't been to university. Nobody I knew was, in an academic or worked in research or science. But I guess I just kind of pushed my way in there. I started asking people at my local astronomy club if they could help me to try and become an astronomer. And I figured out you had to study, physics, maths, chemistry, and those subjects really got me through. So I did a degree in physics, a master's degree, and then I did a PhD, which is your higher research degree after your normal degree, in astronomy and astrophysics. So that was an amazing experience. It was just like having a real job. The second degree, there weren't really exams. It was just more like you got paid a small stipend, like a small salary essentially, and you did real research and worked with real telescopes. So it was kind of like having an awesome job, and my job was to literally find out how stars are born, and that was my first ever job, outside of working in a shop and that kind of stuff. So it was really amazing and really, really exciting to be part of that world, after being a kid who didn't really feel that they knew how to do it. It was a good journey, and I'm really glad I took that journey.
Thanks. So you were kind of looking at star nurseries.
Yeah.
Where baby stars come from?
Where baby stars? Everyone's too afraid to ask where baby stars come from. But the answer is not rude. It's to do with how a supernova explosion leaves a trail of destruction, and all the guts of the old star which exploded, all the guts spill out into space with these amazing chemicals, rich chemicals like carbon and nitrogen and oxygen and metals like gold. And all that stuff pulls together by gravity and creates new stars and new solar systems. And that's where stars come from.
That's amazing.
It is.
Kalinda, can you tell us a little bit about how you decided to become an epidemiologist and how you got there?
Yeah, so when I didn't decide to become an epidemiologist, I think it kind of found me, and I had not undertaken any higher education. I did start a traineeship once I left high school, and I finished high school quite early, so I completed year 12 when I was 16 years old, and no one in my family had really gone down the higher ed space, so I didn't know what I could do after high school. So I ended up doing a a certificate 3 in laboratory techniques. And so I'd learned my way around a lab. And while I was doing that, I fell pregnant. And it was in those moments that I made a decision that I actually wanted to engage a social justice approach to the way in which I wanted to take on science and information. For me, it was about developing up evidence to be able to drive change for the next generation, so for my children. And so in that, I made a decision that I was going to study. And so I ended up taking up a degree in general science. I didn't know what I wanted to do at that point in time. I just knew that I really enjoyed microbiology. And once I started a general science degree, after the first semester, I realised I liked population health. And so I transferred that to a biomedical degree. And once I finished my biomedicine degree, I loved higher education, but again, I didn't know what steps were next. And my mentor, who is still my mentor today, ended up giving me the guidance to go down the path of maybe doing a master's in public health. And so I did the master's in public health. I loved it. And after I'd finished that, there was an opportunity to take up a year's worth of training in cancer epidemiology. And I didn't know what epidemiology was. I didn't know that there was a need for cancer epidemiology in Australia. And at this point in time, we didn't have national statistics for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people with cancer. And so it was part of that program that we ended up getting up those national statistics. And then I went on to do my PhD in cancer epidemiology. So that was kind of my pathway there. My catalyst was being able to drive change. And we've been able to do quite a few things around developing up national frameworks. And we still work on developing up cancer programs today for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and communities.
That's really great. Thanks, Kalinda. It's awesome how you kind of realised that there was, I guess, a problem that you wanted to solve, and then that sort of led you into a career. Marita, when you finished school, did you have a sense of what you wanted to do? How did you decide to pursue engineering?
Well, I remember when I was like 10 or 11, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and my friend and I would stand by the bus stop and would brainstorm about what jobs we wanted, and we'd say every single profession that we could think of, and we'd list like hundreds of professions, and we'd try and list really complicated ones like neurosurgeon, or like otorhinolaryngologist, which is like a nose, throat and mouth surgeon. So we just tried to one-up each other. So I had no idea. But then I think when I was around 12, just from like, I really loved reading books. I participated in the MS Readathon every year, and I just loved it. I read all the books in the fiction section, and then all the non-fiction as well. I just read so much, and one of the books I read was a sci-fi novel about this kid having nanobots injected in his bloodstream, and so when he traveled from one country to another, he didn't experience any jet lag, or he wasn't sick at all. He was always just very, very healthy. But then some bad people got their hands on control of these nanobots and made him sick, and they had to find out who made him sick so that they could get him better. So it just blew my mind how technology could be so powerful, and you could make all these amazing things happen like magic. So I think I was around 12. I was just playing in my backyard in Cairns in far north Queensland, and I thought Google is so amazing. You type in anything, you find out all this information, even in Cairns, so far away from the rest of the world. And I thought it would be so amazing if we had these computer systems in mechanical systems around the world in my home, so that these mechanical systems powered by computer systems, robots, could sweep the floor or do the dishes or do all the household chores. And as soon as I thought of that, I was just like entranced by that idea. I couldn't get it off my mind, and I thought, that's it, that's my goal. I want to be part of this robotics revolution and bring robots to the world. And from that point on, I was like, I can't wait to graduate. Robotics revolution, don't take off without me. And so that made me really excited about robotics, and I chose science subjects in high school so that I could learn more about the area and prepare myself for a career in that field. But my parents, they were they were kind of interested in me doing medicine. It's like an Asian stereotype that parents want their kids to do medicine. And so I was trying to please my parents. So throughout high school, like doing those science subjects, it meant that doing medicine was an option. Year 12, I did the UMAT medicine exam. I flew down to Monash to do an interview for medicine, and they asked me all these biology questions, and then they said, respond to the scenario. John wants to study history, but his parents wanted to do law. What should John do? And so I sat in my seat and squirmed really uncomfortably, and I said, John should study history because that's what he's passionate about. And as soon as that interview was over, I called my mum and I said, I'm doing engineering, and that's that. And I think in that moment, like I'd already finished year 12, but I just thought to myself, I don't want to be a doctor. Like, I don't want to get up every day and go to the hospital for 20 hours. And like, when you're a doctor, your whole career is planned. A lot of it's planned. It's like, it's like you do your internship, you do your placements, and you need to do further education to specialize, and it's all mapped out. Whereas with engineering, it's not mapped out. You can travel the world, you can work on different projects in different countries, you can learn about like robots, you can make medical equipment, you can work on transportation systems, you can work on efficient buildings, you can work on computer programs that connect people, and that sounded really exciting to me as a 17-year-old, just Cairns girl who didn't know anything about the world. I wanted to get out there. I wanted to see the world and see what it could offer. And so I thought, I want to do this adventurous thing and choose this path that's the road less traveled, but that I think will be really exciting. And so I changed my preferences and I put engineering as number 1 and medicine as number 2 on my to get into uni, and luckily I got into engineering, so didn't have to fall back to my second preference.
Yeah, and you really have forged your own path becoming an entrepreneur. How do you go about going from an idea that you've thought of to turning it into a business like what you now have?
Yeah, well, when I was in high school, I didn't know much about entrepreneurship. Like, I don't think I really knew that word at all. I mean, I read about these cool projects that were happening around the world. I read about cool companies. Like, I read about Google and the Google guys, and that was a younger company back then, and it was really exciting how they were doing good for the world and how they were giving all this information, giving people access to all this information. Back then, yeah, Steve Jobs was bringing out all these new shiny products, and that was really exciting to see the iPhone come out. And I just thought, wow, with technology, you can really like change the world, even if you're young, and you can start a company and bring your ideas to the world. And so that was really appealing to me. So when I was at university, I thought, I want to learn more about this entrepreneurship thing and see if I actually like it. And so I just started working on small projects with my friends and learning about how to work with other people and just how to get things done. And I started on really small projects. Like my friend and I, we built a medication reminder service for people taking prescription medication. So when you go to a pharmacy, you get a reminder to take your medicine. And we tried, we got that into like 4 pharmacies. And we, after doing that, it gave me a bit of experience. And I thought, oh, I want to do something bigger and make more of an impact. And my friend said, you love robots. Why don't you teach girls robotics and get more girls into your class, because there's only 5 girls in your mechatronics engineering degree or 50 people. And so I thought that sounded really exciting, and so I created RoboGals. And at the beginning, that was just me recruiting fellow engineering students, getting them excited about going out to schools, and it was also about playing with Lego robots with my fellow engineering students, which was a lot of fun. And we went out with the robots, we taught the girls, people saw what we were doing, they wanted to join, and so more and more people joined, and it grew bigger and bigger. And along the way, we tried things, they didn't work out, we tried other things, they didn't work out, and so I just kept failing over and over again, and through all those failures, I learned something out of everything that I did. And I think one of the biggest things that I learned is that there really is no failure. Like when I was in high school, I never failed. So I remember when I got a bad grade, I would feel really, really bad about myself. It was like I was like, oh, this is the worst. But I didn't. Yeah, and then it was. But I never really failed anything, and so going into uni, I'd never experienced failure. And starting RoboGals and running a project, having it not work out, that's when I first experienced failure. And I realized that I was still alive. My mom still loved me. My friends all still loved me. It was fine. Just get up and try it again. Well, look at what you did. Look at what didn't work out, and try it again. And just doing that over and over again, you just get a little bit better every time, and then you look back and you're like, whoa, I've come so far.
Yeah, that's such an important part of having a career in science or technology or engineering or maths, is turning those failures into learnings. Now I want to ask our audience another question. Can we show the Slido screen, please? So the question I want to ask is, what world challenges do people in STEM careers solve? So many people with a STEM career are trying to solve problems or find out answers to questions, whether that's through observations and experiments or designing and building solutions. What world challenges do you think people in STEM careers solve? It could be something in health or the environment, technology, space travel, even something that you might like to answer in your future career. It might be something you've come across recently that might have been in the news, or something that you're personally interested in. So we've got a couple of answers coming in. We've got poverty, sustainability. Coronavirus is a very topical one, where we've seen lots of medical professionals and also epidemiologists collecting data to help plan for our response. We've got quality of life, gender equality, everything, someone said. There's usually an aspect of science or engineering or technology in many, many things. Medicine, illnesses. It's great to see all of your answers. Humanitarian issues as well. That's an area of engineering that I find really interesting, is humanitarian engineering and kind of the role of scientists and engineers in providing aid. It's really great to see all of your responses. So I wanted to ask Kalinda, part of your work is looking at how health data is managed. Can you explain what people mean when they're talking about big data in health and the problem you're trying to solve in your career?
So when we speak about big data in health, we're often talking about administrative data. And administrative data is all that data that's collected every time you go to a service. So anytime you access, say, your GP or the hospital, information about you is collected. So a lot of the work that I do is around the governance of that data. And this is about the right to be counted as individuals, and for that right to be, I guess, projected to governments to say, as a population or as a citizen of this nation, we have the rights to improve services. And so a lot of the discussion that we have within Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander research is about how do we best govern and make decisions on behalf of communities. And so within that discussion, it becomes quite complex. It's embedded in things like human rights, as well as the analytical factors, which is about how do we best measure health and health outcomes. And so it's about marrying these two worlds. A lot of my work is about bringing together the human rights aspects and those cultural aspects as well, and actually putting them into action when it comes to using that big data and administrative data. So I work across several programs at work. This includes diseases such as rheumatic heart disease, cancer. We also look in child health, and it's also having a look at those social determinants that impact those diseases as well. So it's across the board in terms of quite large data sets, and we do get to do a fair bit of coding within the use of this data. But again, it's about decision making at the end of the day, and it's about who makes decisions on behalf of whom, and making sure that those people who may have experienced invisibility within data systems, data sets, and we're speaking about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people with low socioeconomic status, English as a second language, or culturally and linguistically diverse communities, LGBTQI plus communities as well. Those people are also acknowledged and counted within the data. So yeah, we're trying to tackle some of those issues.
Why is it so important that we can identify those different groups in health data?
Because people have different needs, and health isn't a straightforward blanket. There are different requirements, different conversations, and so we need to acknowledge that and recognise that there are nuanced distributions of health. We have variations in society. We aren't all the same, and I think it's about acknowledging that and recognising that we have the right to be acknowledged as such as well. And I think that that's really very critically important with the way in which we describe data. So all that reporting out there is really very important. And it's important for the way that we see each other as well.
Thank you. Lisa, what sort of science questions were you trying to grapple with in your research, and also now as the Women in STEM ambassador? What problems are you trying to solve?
Well, I think if you look at the bigger picture, the problems of astrophysics are really the problems of understanding the fundamental nature of our reality. So it's about looking into the universe and using this huge laboratory that is up there, all the stars that we can measure, all the galaxies we can measure, and using them as kind of, I guess, puppets to show us who the puppet master is. And the puppet master is gravity and the expansion of the universe, and all the fundamental forces like magnetic fields, electromagnetism. So it's really understanding the fundamental nature of physics through studying the stars. And also in the technology side, we have to use modern technology, obviously, to study the stars in that way. So I was the project scientist for this square kilometre array telescope, which is a gigantic radio telescope still being built in Western Australia. And that project is global. It's huge. It's billions of dollars of expenditure on this huge instrument, which is going to be really significant globally in advancing our understanding of the universe. So that involved a lot of work with supercomputers, with new technologies for looking at the sky, including electronics, digital electronics, working with people who understood the engineering as well as people like myself who understood the science, and working with people who understood the computing problems, and we all worked together to create this enormous new observatory. So that was a really exciting project in particular that I worked on, because it was so many different people from different areas of expertise, and it's such a collaboration really. And that's where I really enjoyed the science, when it was a collaboration and where people were working together to a common goal. In my new role as Women in STEM ambassador, I'm still doing a bit of research on the side, but mainly we're looking at the question of gender equality and inclusion of everyone in STEM. So how do we change the system to remove barriers that women have to advancing their careers in STEM, and that people from other underrepresented groups and backgrounds have, and the intersection of those different areas of disadvantage. So that can include advising the government on government policies that might help on things like parental leave in workplaces, for things like breaking stereotypes, tackling sexual harassment in workplaces, tackling the misunderstanding of what STEM is as well for young people. So lots of different areas where we're trying to make workplaces better, education more suitable for the modern world, and create an environment where everyone feels equally valued and that their voice is 100% contributing to the total story, because science is always this huge collaboration between different points of view, but different ways of interpreting evidence too.
Yeah, thanks. Marita, you're creating a robot called Jivaroo. Can you explain what Jivaroo is for?
Sure. So, my goal was to create robots to help us in our everyday lives. I started by creating robot arms to pick things up for people with limited upper limb mobility, so people with quadriplegia, for example. And then I created Teleport, a telepresence robot. So it allows people to be in multiple places simultaneously. You can be in Sydney or in Brisbane, have a robot in London or New York, and then you can remotely dial into your robot and be effective in multiple places. Meeting in New York, meeting in London, and then lunch with your family in Sydney, and then off somewhere else. And it's a more engaging experience than Zoom or video conference, because if you want to look somewhere, then you can move the robot around and explore. So, I mean, right now you can see the room that I'm showing you, but if you wanted to explore, what's behind the bookcase, you can do that as well with the robot. So they're a lot of fun. But while I was creating this telepresence robot, while I was creating this robot arm, I thought, it would be so much better if this robot arm could have its own movable base, because then it could be useful to so many more people. And after I started creating the telepresence robot, I thought, oh, this is a movable base that can move around and that can elevate something like an arm. And so I thought, wouldn't it be great if I put them together and made a robot arm that had its own movable platform that people could use to do simple chores around the house? And that's how Jivaroo came to be. And so Jivaroo, it has a omnidirectional base. So that means that it can rotate on the spot. It can move like a crab, so hard left, hard right, and it can also go forwards. And then it has a neck that's made up of 2 linear actuators, and so that can change the angle at which you're elevating the arm. And then the limb part of the arm has a shoulder and a wrist and a hand, and the hand can rotate. And so the robot arm has 9 motors all up. And so it can move 8 degrees of freedom, and you can control it to move around, grab things. It's really amazing. And what makes it really impressive is that it can lift 3.5 kilos from 80 centimeters away, which is more than what I can lift. And it's actually really cost effective as well. So it costs around like $3,000 in parts, which is around 100 times cheaper than other home robot arms out there. So it's pretty exciting.
Cool. And so you're creating that robot primarily to assist people with disabilities?
Yeah, that's right. So the use case is that if someone is with a disability is at home and they want a glass of water, they could just press a button by the side of their bed, and rather than a carer needing to get in their car, drive over to that person's house, find out what they want. Oh, they want a glass of water. Here's your glass of water. Anything else? No. Get back in their car, drive back home. That whole interaction could take over an hour just to get that person a glass of water. with this robot, the person with disability could press a button, the carer could instantly appear via the robot, maneuver the robot to the fridge, get the glass of water, give it to the person with disability. So it takes less than 10 minutes of the carer's time. The person with disability waits less than 10 minutes. The carer could then virtually go and control another robot, help another person. The person with disability can get back to sleep. And so it means that both the carer and the person with disability have better quality of life. The carer is able to do more jobs, so spend more time, actually doing a task to help someone with a disability, or they could spend more time with their family. So 2 of the 4 fastest growing jobs over the next 10 years are actually around home health care and aiding people in their homes, health aids. And so it's there's a huge demand for carers, and this robot will help carers make their lives better.
Thanks. That's really great. I want to know when it'll be on the market and people can use it. So before we go to audience questions, I've got one more question I want to ask our audience. So if we can show the poll now, I want to know, what do you think you need to be good at to have a career in STEM? So I want to know your thoughts about what people who work in STEM, what skills they need, or what personal qualities. We've got curiosity and courage, persistence, a couple things that you need to be good at, accepting failure, problem solving, dedication. This is really amazing. I was expecting to see more technical skills popping up, but it's really good to see these kind of more, these broader skills coming in and attributes. So, Lisa, I wanted to ask you, what skills do you use in your STEM career?
Wow, it's hard to know, isn't it? When you think about it, I think you surprise yourself. We always think about STEM in terms of needing maths and science and, technical background. But really, if I look at successful scientists and the ones who can engage with the real world, the ones who can engage with public policy or create new companies or new businesses to make robots that help people with disabilities, or, to create data sets for, the health, to benefit the health of our nation, like Kalinda and Marita. The things you need to be able to do is communicate well, and you need to be able to collaborate well and think about the bigger picture of what you're doing. Why are you studying science? Is it just so you can find something out and write it in a paper that 12 people read, and then, that's kind of the end of it, and it's a little piece of knowledge? That's important, but that's not the end of the story. You really need to be able to communicate that more broadly, explain why it's important, explain why science should be funded. Somebody's got to pay for science, and whether that's the government or companies or individuals, we've got to make the case for science and people's understanding of it and why it's important. And we've got to keep an eye as well on the public interest and what's important right now. And what's important right now, as we're speaking, is COVID and diseases and the prevention of the spread of diseases and helping vulnerable people who may be not able to access the services that they can normally access. So all the things that the others are talking about today are really, really important in this situation. And also things like creating vaccines and personal protective equipment, PPE, masks, gowns, visors. So we need to be able to use science and technology to solve real world problems. And that needs lots of different skills, from collaboration, understanding of finance, of politics, communication, and creativity. That's the biggest one, I think.
Thanks. Kalinda, what do you think? What are the top 3 skills that you use in your work?
I think Lisa is spot on with this. Most of my work would not be possible without collaboration and being able to communicate well to my partners. And so because we do a lot of national work, it's about, bringing together the different jurisdictions and not just in the government sector, but also across community bases as well. And so to do that well, we need to be able to communicate well. The other thing that I use is tenacity. So often within the academic field, you get knocked down a little bit. So you put in applications, and because funding is limited within this space, often, you actually get rejected. And so learning to actually get back up when you get knocked down is something that's really important to keep going forward. And the other one is ongoing learning as well. We do this anyway. The curious people in the crew do this naturally anyway, but it is something that we sometimes get a little bit sidelined with the work. So really making sure that you spend the time and continue to learn, that ongoing upskilling, I guess, is really important. So at the moment, like, I'm learning Python, and so my statistical language is Stata, and I'm across that, no worries. And I can use a couple of different other languages, but I'm not very good at Python, so it's taking the time out to learn those skills and upskilling across the different disciplines as well. Yeah.
Thanks. And Marita, what about you? What are your quick 3 skills?
Problem solving. If you have an objective of what you want to build in mind, once you start, you're going to run into, I didn't realize that I can't do that, or I'm running all these test cases and, there's a bug, I need to fix that bug. Your code, you can't hide from your code. Problem solving. To Lisa's point, am I building the right thing? Like, what is the world what is the world today like? Does the world need what I'm building? And so it's like being considerate about that. You don't want to, you don't want to spend your time building something that people don't get value from. So that's really important. And I think communication is really key with your teammates, so that you can work on something that's bigger than yourself, but also so you can communicate your vision, so that you are working on the same thing. If you can't communicate effectively, then this person might be working on something, and that person might be working on something, and it won't mesh. Also with communicating, in order to sell your product and have it come to life, you need to get collaborators on board. You need to get partners on board. You need to get funding on board. And so being able to communicate your ideas effectively is really important.
Thanks. So I'm going to ask some audience questions now. Thanks everyone for writing your question. Lisa, I will ask you this one. I want to do a science degree, however, I don't want to go into research. What careers are science graduates going into, and which industries?
Yeah, absolutely anything. Most science graduates don't become researchers, and that's great, because we really need people in the world who understand science and logic and decision make based on evidence. When you look at politicians who are really effective in the world, I would think of people like Jacinda Ardern. They're people who are willing to look at evidence and take the advice of experts and consult people who are expert in their areas. And those leaders are very, very useful. So people working not just in politics as politicians, but in government. There are tens of thousands of people working in government jobs who have to make policies and make decisions. There'll be people in the teaching profession. There'll be people in banking, finance with STEM skills, people who have to make apps, do all the calculations, financial trading, all of that stuff, accounting, those all need STEM skills. And then lots of people now in data science as well. So computer programming, understanding data, understanding statistics. And that's used in so many areas, from health to finance, education, policy. There's hundreds of others. Even logistics, like how food gets around the country in trucks, things like that, things you wouldn't even think of. Agriculture, most big farms are actually, they have huge technologies in them now, like they're monitored by satellites in some cases. and wineries. The amount of moisture in the soil is monitored by satellite. So everything really creates this fertile environment. If you have the STEM skills, you can do anything, literally. Even musicians and artists now use computer and technology to mix and create sounds. And you know, any possible area that you go into, you'll need STEM.
Thanks, Lisa. I've got a question that I will direct to Kalinda. How different is your work day to day? And what sort of things do you do?
So, yes, it's very different day to day. Some days are spent navigating the policy realm and having discussions to try and advocate for the primary project I'm working on now is developing up national evidence-based Indigenous data guidelines. So this is for the use for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and their data. And so one day I can be negotiating terms across, you know, different partners for that. And the next day I can be doing a literature review. The following day I can be coding. Often every space that I work in has very clear brain function. So I often don't like jumping from one brain function to another really quickly. So going from something like coding straight into a policy discussion is a different world. And so you kind of have to get your head out and into the game. But what this means is that you do get to learn how to drive different, I guess, skills during your week. And so I guess it's quite exciting from day to day. I would put it that way. And I feel very lucky to be able to have such a broad skill set, and also people around me that can assist if I get stuck as well. Yeah.
Thanks. And Marita, what about you? Is your work very different every day?
That's one of the things that really excited me about entrepreneurship. You need to learn all these different skills in order to survive. So yeah, it's very different day to day. So one day I might need to look at our finances and go through all of that. Another day I'll be coding and my head will be in that the whole day, and we'll be solving problems that's why I think creativity is really important as well to engineering, because you want to constantly have your eyes open and be looking for inspiration from everything, how things are made, how things work, be curious about books and arts and music, and everywhere in the world there's inspiration that you can use for your work in solving problems in your work. What else? Yeah, one day I might be writing a grant application, another day might be invoicing someone, or selling something, or pitching something, or every day is very different, and it's exciting to need to learn all these different skills and challenge yourself, and just keep learning and keep bettering yourself. I think that's really exciting, knowing that like the things that I can do now I couldn't have imagined 10 years ago, and I think that's really exciting, because then it's like, wow, I have so much more capacity to change the world and make a difference. And with STEM skills, there is no limit. Like whatever you can imagine, you can create it with your hands.
Thanks. It's amazing, Kalinda and Marita, to see how much variety there is in your days, in your careers. Now, everyone, I'll start with Lisa. We've got a question. Who inspires you?
My team inspires me. The people I work with, like you, Lauren, and all the other fantastic people that we have in our team. Because when you're working on something that you're all passionate about, and you work together and you communicate together really well, that inspires me. And the other thing that inspires me is actually young people, and really young people who are coming through and want to know about STEM, like the people watching today. And young people today care passionately about making the world better. They care about climate change, and clean water, and making sure there's enough food in the world, and making sure that people can be healthy. And those challenges are the ones we need to really face and solve. And we can solve those through science and technology. So that all of that stuff inspires me. And knowing that people are going to come through and really get their head around some of the big problems, not just think, I'm going to go on a career path, study, get a job, that's the end of it. It's about looking at the whole world and saying, what are the problems in the world? How can I make it better? Just like Marita's done. How can I build something that helps people? And that's really, really inspiring for me.
Thanks. Kalinda, how about you? Who inspires you?
I mean, my primary motivators are my children and my community. And so it's the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing effectively. But ultimately, the inspiration is driven from those advocates, those people who are willing to stand up for those people who may not necessarily have a voice or a platform, and to say, hey, why don't we develop up these mechanisms so that people can be heard and seen? The Gretas of the universe. These are the spaces in which, I guess innovation and solutions are built. And so I think, it's the advocates. It's the people willing to stand up and say, okay, we have some issues that we need to tackle. And in doing this, we need to do it the right way, and to do that gently as well. And also other people who inspire me, I've got a couple of mentors as well, and so some quite powerful women who often are quiet behind closed doors, but who have done incredible things and strides stepping forward to be able to drive change within societies. That you probably will never know of, but they're also the people that inspire me. Those quiet workers behind the closed doors that are whittling away at those big changes.
Thanks, Kalinda. And Marita, quickly, who inspires you?
I think my team really inspires me. Once you work on a project with other people who are as passionate as you are about a project, you just feed off each other's energy. And so, especially as an entrepreneur, working on something, trying to get something off the ground, you come up a lot of roadblocks, and so you might be discouraged one day, but then you talk to a team member and they've done a lot of work, and that's like really inspiring, and gives you the energy and motivation to keep working hard. And you meet with another team member and they've done the work, and you're like, oh my god, this is so amazing, I got to keep going, this is great. And so I think working on an exciting project with other people and feeding off each other's energy is so motivating. The other thing that I find motivating is my friends. I have some friends who work on some really cool projects. Like one friend, he started a company making a robot farm, like a hydroponic robot farm, where there's no soil at all, and he grows like basil and cabbage and herbs, and it's all hydroponic. So they put in all the chemicals that the plants need, and then they sell the basil at the local supermarket, like less than a kilometre away from where they make it in their robot farm warehouse. And I've got friends who are trying to do all this research to find out early onset of Alzheimer's. And I just think it's so cool that I've got another friend who does like manufacturing of recycled chopsticks from like Japanese restaurants, and he makes posters and chopping boards. And he's got a micro factory, and he's got plans to like build all these micro factories so that goods can be manufactured locally, saving on carbon footprint. And
it's amazing to hear. Sorry to cut you off, Marita.
Yeah, so I just think it's great that, So I just think it's great that they're working on all these exciting things, and yet they're just like nice, humble people who are really hardworking, who've started on small projects and set themselves bigger and bigger challenges, and now they're working on really cool things, changing the world. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it is amazing to hear what all these other people in their exciting STEM careers are doing as well, and the teamwork that you obviously all have in your careers. So just to wrap up, there's one question that kind of leads into what I want to wrap up with. So how can we get more involved in STEM in high school? So to the students who've watched this, what can they do next? Lisa, can you tell us one thing that students can do next?
Yep. Depending on where you live, get involved in some way with either work experience or a project, whether it's remote work experience through organisations like the CSIRO. You can do that online now if you live in remote areas of Australia. Probably everywhere now is remote because we're all remote from one another through COVID. But get some practical experience. The National Youth Science Forum is another example. But every region has fantastic activities that you can do in science or technology. Either get work experience locally or some sort of national program, and do something hands-on, do some projects, meet some real people who work in STEM, and ask them questions. Don't be shy, because we love helping people who are coming through. And really just exert yourself, because you deserve to get a sense of what it's like to work in different fields before you commit to that. So that's my number one, I guess.
Thanks, Lisa. On that note, I'll let you know that we've got a range of different resources, and the program, the CSIRO internship that Lisa mentioned, they're all on the Women in STEM Ambassador website, and you'll be able to find a link down below this video, and you can go to those resources. And a lot of you ask quite in-depth questions about different STEM careers, so you'll be able to visit those resources and get kind of more detailed information about the area of STEM that you are interested in. I'd also like to tell you about the Girls in STEM Toolkit, which is another really great online resource, and also the UNSW STEM careers page, which has just launched, which has a quiz and other information about different STEM careers and what you can study. I'd like to thank all of you for asking your questions this evening, and also to our speakers, Kalinda, Marita and Lisa, for joining us this afternoon. I've activated a short survey in Slido, and we would really appreciate if you could complete this. There are only 5 questions, and if you have any other comments about the event, you can type them into Slido as well. I also encourage you to jump on the National Science Week website to find out more activities that are happening this week. And I hope that you found this session interesting, and if you would like to keep up with more events that the Office of the Women in STEM Ambassador runs, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook at Women in STEM AU, and by subscribing to our YouTube channel. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this event, and we'll see you next time. Bye.